morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar about becoming the Gen Z advisor. We're just letting people get in, so we'll leave it for 10 or 20 more seconds to get everyone on the session. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to this wonderful panel today. Right, we'll start off. Now, the financial planning industry is full of passionate individuals who believe in the positive impact of financial advice. And we are lucky to have an emerging cohort of financial planning students who could be full-time students right now. They could be paraplanners, they could be CSOs, associates, anything under the sun, or still in a retail position. And in this student takeover edition, we will have the facilitation carried out by financial planning students. Our panel consists of Alistair Bear, who is an expert in placing young people in financial planning and accounting roles, Azaria Bell, an industry-leading Gen Z advisor, and two financial planning students, Lily Walker, who's doing her financial planning qualifications with Kaplan Professional, and Osama Al-Fadawi, who is doing it with Deakin University. Now, our hosts today, we have Jack, from Edith Cowan University and Kaplan, because Jack is an overachiever. He's doing two different qualifications at the same time. Zachary from Curtin University and Ashtos from Deakin University. But before we jump in and meet everyone and let the student takeover happen, a few housekeeping information. You will get some CPD points from today's session, and we'll leave the questions to the end. So if you could pop those questions into the Q&A box, I'll be going through them and we will address them at the end. If we run out of time, we will be able to get them answered in the post-webinar email when this recording will be available for you. With that, Jack, I'm going to leave this in your capable hands. On to you, Jack.
Thank you so much, Dawn, and thanks for the great introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So I'll be interviewing Alistair. So thank you very much, Alistair, for joining us. Just tell us a little bit about Striver. So you're the founder of Striver. Give us a little bit of background on that.
What we do is we help young people like you, get your first start into your career in financial planning. So that's sort of our focus and our core, supporting you, mentoring you, and coaching people to get their first start in the financial services industry. My background is West Australian. I'm West Australian. My parents live in Mosman Park. I grew up in and around that area, and my first job, I remember washing cars at Volvo in South Perth, actually, on Canning Highway there. It's not Volvo anymore, and with a marketing degree, and couldn't get myself a job. And so what I did was I enrolled in this thing called financial planning, a diploma of, and then sent sort of 12 letters off to 12 small firms in Perth with F for financial planning, the title, and said, let me come and work for you, just trying to get that first start. My education, my grades and everything, and my degree were not the things that made me stand out. And so I really had to kind of hustle my way into that first role. And then I spent 12 months working in a firm in Perth, and then drove 3,956 kilometres to Sydney here, and I've been here ever since, and started working in a small firm, and then ended up working 10 years in Australia's largest bank that's just recently, in the last day or two, passed its financial planning business off to AIA. You guys can bridge the gap there, and had a really, really great time. But then when I left the bank to go and change the world, ended up going back up to the Pilbara and working in Indigenous workplace ready programs and around financial literacy. I ended up having to sort of work out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and we built Striver out of what I'd learned on how to get yourself into your career, and a profession that I love, right? The one that I spent all my sort of early, everything since I've been working in, and I know the impact of financial advice, the difference it makes in a really amazing profession, helping, everything that I learned, packaging that up and giving it back to young people to help them sort of get their first foot in the door and not have to do the stuff I did to get my first job. And so that's what Striver does. And you know, we've helped about 600 young people like you get their first job in the last 8 years, and we'll do another 200 of that in the next 12 months. So yeah, that's
amazing.
the background.
Yeah, really good. So why are you so passionate about young people? Because Striver does particularly focus on graduates and new entrants into the industry. So why has that been your goal with Striver?
Well, it's new entrants is what we do. And so, I mean, it's just a harrowing process. Like I put my hat on and think about all the, how harrowing the idea of approaching the job market would be for that first time. It was painful for me back then. And I've learned a lot through that time. You know, like that last role I had at CommBank, I was responsible for employing 1,200 people. So kind of understand some of the pitfalls and then what it is to manage your career and so forth. And sometimes I think our role is to make sure that we can help, you know, the next generation not fall into the same holes or give them the lessons that we learned so that they can just sort of learn their own lessons and share them into the future. And that's part of it. And also, Jack, you know, we work with equally young people getting them into roles. We work with 450 financial planning and accounting firms who are all going through this exercise of, you know, hiring the next gen, and they need just as much support and help and around making good decisions on that. So the fact that, you know, new entrants to the profession are the solution to that problem is just part of the puzzle. So we spend just as much, maybe sometimes more time supporting the businesses in making good hiring decisions to get new entrants into the profession.
No, you're right. And it is definitely, it can be quite challenging when you're first coming out of uni. So it's great to have someone like Striver there to support us and I guess the businesses as well that are wanting to hire us grads. So what would you say is the biggest challenge entering financial planning at the moment? Obviously, it's quite an interesting situation with COVID and the like.
I think leading on from that is the biggest problem that you guys will face is where do you start? What are the opportunities? Where do you find those opportunities? Like I know, thinking about what every student that I've ever worked with and what I did was like applying online, applying on Seek, trying to go to networking events and awkwardly struggling my way through asking for jobs there and not knowing if it's right or wrong, or am I being authentic, or all of those things. So knowing where to start. And also at the moment, as I was saying beforehand, the opportunities, every time I do one of these over the last 8 years, I said it's a perfect storm. You new entrants have got all the power here. There's so many opportunities, more and more and more. Like we have, 450 firms and 70 students. I mean, there's an absolute war for talent, and it's not just financial planning, new entrant, professional year issues. There's global trends on that, and we see this great resignation coming and exiting advisors and growing wealth. And so there's a really big opportunity for you guys. And I think now more than ever, it used to be get your feet under the desk, get a job, and then work it out from there. Now it is, no, hang on, you have choice. You have more choice than you've ever had, making good decisions, finding those opportunities, and presenting yourself in the best light to not awkwardly manage your way through a networking event and asking for a job, but actually sitting in front of a person that's going to make a decision and absolutely convincing them that you're the right person for the role. That's the biggest opportunity and challenge.
You're right. It definitely is a great opportunity for us. Do you have any tips on how we can prepare for those networking events and for those awkward conversations that we may not be natural at coming out of uni?
Yeah. Hey, we had a call, you and me, last Friday, and can you remember how it all started? Well, the first part, I don't know if you were nervous talking to me or not, probably not. Some people get nervous, but we talked about sport, where you were, where you lived, what you're doing, everything other than what we actually were on the phone call for. And what I call that is being authentic, right? Yeah. Everybody in this room, everybody listening, and everyone on the panel has a story, and it's a really interesting story, and it's your story. And so you can't get that wrong. So I would always be asking people about their story and being prepared to tell your story, because that's the thing that human beings connect on. So, the first one was being authentic. The other thing is, there's not an employer that I've worked with in the last 8 years that hasn't wanted people to demonstrate these sort of three things: attention to detail, a strong work ethic, and treating it like a career, not a job, right? And working in a team, right? Those are the four things that every business wants to see. And there's not one of them that said, no, that's not important to me. And so, and you might never have had any work experience in financial services, and that's fine. But if you've been pulling beers in a pub, working at Woolworths, stacking shelves at night, working in the family business, parking cars, whatever you've been doing, you can show the transferable skills you've got from that to here. I've worked under pressure. I've dealt with customers. I've worked in a team. All of those things you've done washing cars at Volvo. So you need to be able to articulate how those things you've learned in there hit the nail on the head with exactly what every single employer I've ever worked with is looking for. So that being clear on how your skills that you've got from your casual job are transferable into the workplace.
Oh, that's really good. And what sort of changes do you see Striver making to adjust? Because I think we've seen over the past 6 months the power going from the employer to the employee. And does that change your business, and does that change the way that I guess we should be approaching our first job?
No, I mean, it's sort of ebbs and flows, right? Like with any business, you have a supply and demand fluctuation on all sorts of sides. But, I guess the more I speak to young people, and right now it's like about what you want to be when you grow up and what's important to you. And I always like talking about, I don't know if you guys know, it's been a long time since we've seen beer coasters in this part of the country, but the back of the beer coaster exercise of what's important to you in your first role. And I think that's a really important thing that you should all look at. And what I mean by that is like jot down what are the 5 most important things, and please put money 5 or 6, because your starting salary at this firm or this firm is going to be a rounding error in a few years' time. So don't worry too much about it, as long as it's fair and reasonably paid. You must be fair. Everybody must be fair and reasonably be paid. Nobody should be doing unpaid work experience unless you're getting university credit for that. Please, can I just say that here? And it might be, what are you looking for? Culture, location, demographics, social purpose, leadership, career growth, opportunity, ongoing education, career pathway, whatever they might be. Make sure that you put some thought and effort around what's important to you. Because if you do get choice and you do get 2, 3 opportunities, having that back of the beer coaster exercise is the one where you can put some mathematics behind your decision making. Because one day, when you have your first job, I can guarantee you one thing will happen. You'll have a bad day. And on that bad day, if you haven't gone through a bit of a process and weighed up your options and put some science behind it, you get what's called buyer's remorse. And you go, oh, what if I did that? So that's my recommendation, that you guys, especially while you guys have got all the power here, that's how I'd be approaching it.
Oh, that's really good. So thank you very much for that, Alistair. I'm sure there's going to be a few more questions from our panelists and our attendees at the end. So I'm going to hand over to Zach now, who's going to interview Azaria.
Thanks so much, Jack. Interviewing Azaria today, who's one of the high achievers in the industry. So I guess my first question straight off the bat for you is, tell us a little bit about your journey and what really attracted you to financial planning.
So when I finished high school, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. All I knew that was that I liked business class. So I went on to do a Bachelor of Business, picked up a couple of majors, dropped a couple, wasn't really sold on anything. But one of the challenges of going to university for me was that I wasn't able to get HECS. So I had to pay for my fees up front. So that very quickly at 18 kicked me into gear. I was working 30 hours a week, and I started an Excel spreadsheet where I planned how much I'd need to save each week to be able to meet my HECS repayments. And in that process, I had to get really good at managing money. So I picked up a book by Noel Whittaker called Making Money Made Simple, learned about the Australian financial system. And back then, there weren't really many people talking about money online. So I watched a lot of Dave Ramsey, who's just like an American guy who yells a lot about money. So from that, I learned quite a bit. And then I started helping out my friends with their money. So just like helping my friends set up budgets and things like that. And then I got sick of doing that. And I started to just make a video explaining a concept, and then I just send that to friends instead. But I really enjoyed it. It was something that I was really passionate about. I was learning a lot about and wanted to help other people with. And I thought, I wonder if there's a way I could do this as a job and get paid for it. And that's kind of how I found out about financial planning. And by that point, thankfully, the rules had changed. I was able to get HEX. So I transferred into financial planning, kept making my videos. And yeah, I fell into it that way. I thought, oh my goodness, that you're telling me that I could actually do this every day, help people with money, something that I love doing, and I can make a career out of it. So I kind of fell into it in a strange way, but haven't looked back since.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can definitely relate to myself a little bit in you there. So especially with those Dave Ramsey videos. So I guess you've always been a high achiever as well in the industry. What really motivates you to be this way?
So when I was in university, the way I kind of looked at my career was there are thousands of other financial planning students across Australia. They're all going to graduate with the same piece of paper as me. What makes me different and what makes me stand out to employers? So for me, it was trying to build my profile as much as I can. So being really active on LinkedIn, applying for scholarships, applying for awards, doing all of that kind of stuff to get my name out there and get my face out there. Now, I think a lot of people will think if you're not an advisor yet, you maybe don't have much to say or you don't really have much value to add, but I would completely disagree with that. I've found that all people in this industry have been so receptive to young people and students getting involved in the industry and getting their voice out there. And the more you can do that now, the bigger of a network you can build and the more choice you have for job opportunities once you do graduate. So yeah, it was all just about building my name and also building my confidence. I find that at university, that's the time to make mistakes and practice all of those soft skills. So going to conferences, I know that it's been hard lately, even just attending things like this online, you can get so much value from learning from other people. So yeah, it was just about building my profile. And because I put in those hard yards doing that earlier on, it's made my career progression much easier and much more aligned with my goals now that I'm actually in the industry.
Yeah, no, fantastic answer. I completely agree with all the networking. You got to get out there. You got to get your face out there. Otherwise, no one's going to know who you are. So, all right. So you are a podcast host of the Gen Z Money as well. So how did that start? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so back in the day when I had the YouTube channel, I really loved the messages that I was getting out there. So talking about things like credit cards, budgeting, all of that kind of stuff. I loved what I wanted to say. I just hated video production, just wasn't for me. Editing videos, having to put on my makeup, get in front of a camera, I just hated it. But then thankfully, a couple of years after that, the rise of podcasting came up. So in 2018, I believe, I met an Australian financial advisor at a conference in Florida. It was called FinCon, and it was for like financial content creators, because that was a really huge thing in America at the time and not so much in Australia. Not many people were talking about money on online platforms. So I met this advisor, his name was Glenn, and he told me that he was starting a podcast called My Millennial Money. And I was like, oh, cool, that sounds really cool. And then we became friends over that. He'd send me early episodes and ask for my opinion. So we just built a friendship with him over the years. And then last year, he asked me if I wanted to host his little sibling podcast, which was Gen Z Money, where we talk specifically about topics that are relevant to people around 25 and under. So I'm really thankful for that, because now I can get my message out there without all the hassle of video production, which was always a really big barrier to entry for me. And yeah, we post weekly or fortnightly about different topics that are relevant to young people. And it's very fulfilling because it achieves my purpose of financial education in a way that's easy for me to create and easy for other people to consume.
Oh, that's really good. I know I've listened to Glenn's podcast a lot. I'm going to have to check out yours after this.
Definitely.
So I guess my final question for you is, what's your advice to the future financial planning students, and what tips can you give?
Well, I think the first piece of advice is relevant for your career and just life in general, and that's to write down your goals every year. So at the end of every year, I write down my 2-year goals, review them each year, cross some things off, add some things, just be on top of what it is you want to achieve personally and in your career. Second thing would be to be active on LinkedIn. Again, even if you feel like you're not doing much or you don't have much to say, get on LinkedIn, add people that you might want to work for, people that you find interesting, absolutely anyone in the industry, because the more that you post or engage with their posts, the more they see your name in your face. And even if they've never met you before, they kind of start to feel like they know you. So that if one day you do apply for a job, you're going to come up and they're going to be like, I know that person from somewhere. And you didn't even have to do anything to get there. You may be technically a nobody in the industry, but that's really important. So even people that are on this webinar today, even posting about the webinar and saying that you've attended something, just shows potential employers that you're really active and you're going above and beyond just doing your study and going home from uni. And then probably the third thing would be to get as much experience as you can early on and figure out what you want your dream career to look like. So I've worked a couple of different jobs, and that was really good because it helped me figure out what I do want and also what I don't want. So the sooner that you can, I guess, figure out what you want your dream career as a financial planner or in the financial planning industry to look like, you can start doing things that align you in the right direction to get on that path. And I think that's a huge advantage, because many people will work for years and years in a job that they don't really like because they haven't got a plan on what they want to do. And I think everyone can agree that there's a power in goal setting. If you are intentional about it, you're going to get there a lot faster than if you're just drifting around and hoping to land somewhere at some point.
Completely agreed. Thank you so much, Azaria. We're going to hand over to Ashutosh, who's now going to be interviewing Lily and Osama.
Thanks there, Zach. That was great to hear from you, Azaria, as well. Just wanted to introduce myself first. My name is Ashutosh Dendagi. I'm a Deakin University student. And today we have Osama and Lily with us today. How are you guys going?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good, thank you.
That's good. So Osama is a content creator on financial planning, similar to Azaria. And we also have Lily Walker, who's also a junior associate currently undertaking a grad diploma at Kaplan. Could you guys just go through and how you went from studying or choosing your bachelor's and then going to where you're at right now? Was that offered Lily?
I was pretty much the same as Azaria. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I did a business degree because you didn't have to pick straight away what you would specialize in. And then from there, I did accounting and business law because those were the two that I kind of did the best at. And then after that finished, I had no industry experience at all, and I panicked and I said, okay, I'll start a law degree. And I did that for one semester and then went, I don't want to be a lawyer. So I had a year off, and then I just had sort of a natural interest in financial planning through books. I discovered Canna Campbell, who has written The $1,000 Project and Mindful Money. My old boss gave me a copy of The Barefoot Investor, and just started listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and all of that kind of stuff. And then I just looked at going into financial planning, and here we are.
That's great to hear. How about you, Osama? How did you sort of get into content created after a student, after going through that entire process?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for the question there. Well, first off, I just want to mention is that, just keep trying. Don't give up. There's a great quote that goes like, to learn something new, you need to try new things and not be afraid to be wrong. And it can relate to anything, not just content, even with landing your dream job, networking, and even being confident, because great things happen to those who believe in themselves. And I'm sure everyone here can vouch for me on this one. And as a result, it helped me increase my profile presence, because I applied for another financial planning association body, which I included my content in my job application. And I believe they liked it, because now I am working for them. And you can do the same. The sky is the limit. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That's great to hear. Just along with that one, Osama, how do you choose your topics for your videos that you present and publish out?
Yeah, sure. That's another great question. So for me, really, I if I attend my lectures or university, I listen to what is a subject that I'm interested in and see how it relates to me. Because at the end of the day, you have to choose a subject that you like personally, because if you choose a content that you want to produce, but you're not happy with producing, you don't have the same motivation if you make content that you like. So as always, it doesn't have to be video content. It could be, it could be writing your own, your own piece, it could be a writing content. It could be a picture, it could be a video, whatever it is, the sky's the limit. And I'm sure everyone here who is watching can do the same.
Too easy. That's actually a really good motivation to get out there and sort of make sure you have some sort of activity going on. Lily, you're working as well as studying. How do you find that work-life balance treating you?
It's pretty rough at the moment. I'm not as crazy as Jack, who's doing what I'm doing plus his bachelor's. But I think just finding little things in between to kind of break up. I feel like a lot of people that I talk to when they're studying, you often feel guilty when you're not studying, if you're out enjoying yourself and things like that. So I think just giving yourself that time to go to the beach, watch whatever you want to watch on Netflix, and then be like, right, I'm gonna sit down and do my study now. And like Azaria said, it's so much easier when you're working in it and studying at the same time. It all kind of, clicks together and helps you understand things a bit better in a real life context. So when you're studying, you find it easier to process that information, and then you're like, okay, I know what this is. You don't feel the need to keep going over and over and over it because you're doing it in your everyday work life, and then you do get more time to enjoy yourself and exercise and all that stuff.
Respite, going out to the beach, hopefully.
Yes. When it gets warmer, it'll be great to go to the beach.
Great. But yeah, as you said, unlike Jack, you, after completing your bachelor's, you started your grad diploma with Kaplan. What sort of made you decide to continue on that path?
I think I just didn't have anything under me yet that I could work with, I think, into a pathway that I wanted to go down. As I said, I started the law degree, and at that point I started working at a legal recruiter's, and I was there for about 1.5 years. And then I'd had a year off uni, and it was like, right, what's your next move? I'd been traveling. And so then I just kind of was like, okay, if I want to go into financial planning, because I thought that could be something that I was interested in, what do I need to do? And then literally within the space of like 2 weeks, I started looking at going back to uni. They were like, you can start next week. And I was like, great. And then I started applying for jobs straight away, because after my first degree, I didn't want to get to the end of this one and not have any work experience. And then I got a job within that space again, and I moved out of home, and it was all happening all at once. But it was really great to just, dive right into it basically, and go all in.
Well, that's good to hear that sort of get a little break in between, find what you really want to do. Just for both of you guys, Lily and Osama, how, like, if you were to go back, how would you sort of build up your professional brand and sort of get yourself out there in industry? Because sure, everyone's trying to get into it right now.
You can go first if you want, Lily.
Oh, thank you. Building up my personal brand. I think I kind of, like Alistair said, I knew what my transferable skills were. Like, I'd been working as like a swim teacher and lifeguard, which is not anything like financial planning, but you just find the transferable skills and make that your asset that you present to people. Even though you don't have work experience in this particular industry, this is the skills that I have to bring. And, I've obviously done a degree. I've got that commitment under your belt, because that's what a degree is. It's showing that you have commitment. I think those were the key things about building branding for me. I wouldn't necessarily say that, I would have gone and, tried to become any sort of influencer or anything like that just to get a job. But I think those are the key points.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, sure. I actually agree with Lily on that one. But let's just say if you're a new entrant student who don't have any skills, what you can do right now is build those skills while you're studying. You can, make video content, or if you don't know how to make a video content, just write paragraphs and just share it on social media. As Zaria mentioned, building your personal brand on social media is so important right now, especially during COVID. You see a lot of people are more engaged online. So take that advantage, because I'm sure many of you guys who are watching this webinar right now are all capable on how to use social media. So that's my biggest take is, just go out there and, share your ideas, and yeah, I'm sure it'll be heard.
That's great to hear. Just with that one, where do you sort of, like both of you guys, where do you sort of see the financial planning industry heading towards, especially as Generation Z does enter the industry, and sort of with the new qualifications that they have as well?
I think it's a really interesting time, because obviously we can relate to people in our age group a lot, whereas the clients that you typically see in a financial planning firm are not people under 25. So I think it's interesting for us coming into this at such a young age to understand the issues and needs of people in older generations, and finding our ways to serve the people in our generation through social media and things like that. I think that's definitely the thing that we're going to face the most.
That's good.
Yeah, and picking up on Lily, I actually agree. I think with the new entrants, you guys will have a big advantage over taking charge of the new financial planning profession, because we're moving more digitalized, and people with our caliber, or with your caliber, you guys will have a better understanding on how to use social media, or how to even, with the new trends on apps, and you guys are more capable and more used to, and how to engage with it. So I believe with the new financial planning emerging, you guys will have a better opportunity.
That's actually great to hear. Thank you Lily and Osama for taking the time out of your busy mornings and giving us your invaluable insight as to how we can build up our brands as well. With that, I'd actually like to thank all the panelists for attending today, and conclude the interview portion of this morning's proceedings, and hand it over to Jack.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, and thank you everyone for joining us, and a special thanks to Azaria and Alistair for giving your insights. I definitely got a lot out of it, and I'm sure everyone listening did as well. So we've got a fair bit of time left now for a bit of a Q&A. So Dawn, I'll hand back over to you. And guys, if you have any questions, please put it in the box below, in the Q&A box, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jack, Zach, and Ashutosh. I think you did really well as facilitators. Thank you for that. And Lily and Osama as well for being part of the student takeover, and then Alistair and Azaria, of course, just lending your knowledge and your experience to round it off. It's great that we have actually a bit of time for questions. Now, Dion has a question around convincing your employer to take you through the professional year. I think this is a very, very important question, because you might really like where you work, but they may not have gotten their act together to start up a professional year. Azaria, you seem to be nodding your head on that one. Do you have some views on that question?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the best way to approach this is to assume that your employer knows nothing about the professional year, because they probably don't. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to approach you and ask you to go through it. So you need to take the power in this situation. And the way I approached it with two different employers was so FACIA have a document on their website outlining exactly what you need to do in your professional year by each quarter, at what point you need to do the exam, at what point you can start seeing clients. So it's really comprehensive. So I would just get completely all over the information there, read that one back to front, and become the expert in your workplace on the professional year. And then what I did from there, because I didn't want to give my employers a 20-page document and ask them to read that, I just wanted to make it as easy as possible, because employers, they just don't have the time to do anything, let alone read through something about the professional year. So what I did was I made a 2-page document outlining my professional year plan and what I need to do to achieve it and what I need my employer to do for me. So I wrote down each quarter what I'm going to do, what my employer needs to help me with, at what point am I going to do the exam. So I'd even go online to the FACIA website, see when the exam sittings were, pick out the one that I plan to do, just show that you've got an exact plan in place, you know the dates, you're across everything. If you can present them a document that's easy for them to read, it shows that you know what you're doing, they're going to be like, well, you seem to have it under control. Feel free to take it from here. So that worked really well for me. Just make it as easy as possible for your employer, take on the brunt of the work, and they'll be much more open to it.
I think that's really, really good advice, Azaria. And again, a demonstration as to why you've done so well with where you are. It's just that I think with the landscape of financial planning at the moment, I think financial planning practices are battling with a number of changes that are happening. So they might not be doing it on purpose by not addressing the professional year. And if it's a place you really like working, following what you're saying and just going in there with a plan, I think they'll be really thankful. But that also shows how you are contributing for the future as well. Alistair, do you have any thoughts on this, your perspective, seeing new entrants in? You know, what would be your view on this?
Yeah, I think what Azaria said was great. If you're in a role already, fantastic. And if they're not really over the professional year, then that's a great way to do it. But I think I don't know. Normally, I talk about managing a career is quite an easy thing once you get into a role. One of the things you need to do to get them down that track is to demonstrate the value that you bring to them. Always do a little bit more than is expected of you, and demonstrate the value that getting you on the register and getting you in front of clients, if that's what you want to do, is the right thing to do. So that's that bit. But then back earlier with the beer coaster conversation, making sure that when you're meeting these businesses that are going to be a potential employer, that they're thinking about it, that you're thinking about it, if it's something that you want to pursue. Because don't forget, the financial planning profession has a lot of different roles that aren't always about going into professional year and becoming an advisor. So just park that for a moment, but just making sure it's on the table and the employees thought about it. And when they're talking to you, they're thinking about what your career progression is, because that certainly fits in that career progression part of the matrix that you should be drawing out. What's my development? What's the career path and so forth? It's a lot easier for a business to talk to you and for you guys to agree on what the milestones are to an outcome, because then on your 6-monthly review or quarterly review or annual review, you're talking about how, as Aria said, this is what I'm going to do and this is what you're going to do. And then we're going to come together at the 6-month period and check off to see whether we delivered and so forth. So I think that's a really important thing, to make sure that you're having conversations with these firms and make sure these firms are giving you the comfort that they have a plan for you.
Thank you for that.
Ball's in your court now, remember?
Yeah. I love that kind of input around that. And I know that, we've got some feedback from our participants saying that they're going to give it a go. So we're going to have a lot more employers having their young people coming and going, I have a plan. We've got a professional year plan. So that's absolutely brilliant. Anthony's got a question, again, very valid question, right? So he's kind of saying, how do you address the life experience gap between yourselves as an advisor or future advisor versus your prospective clients? Because it could be true, you could be dealing with all the clients. I remember the wet behind the ears comment when I first started all those years ago. I mean, what's your experience, Alice and Azaria, since you guys are in this world actively now?
I had the same fear when I was starting out, and it's still something I'm conscious of now. But something someone said to me early on, I can't remember who it was, it could have been one of you guys, to be honest, was that people come to a financial planner because they acknowledge that the financial planner is the subject matter expert. So if I were to go to a mechanic and the mechanic is 19 years old, that's not going to faze me. I assume that the mechanic is qualified and they know what they're doing because that's their area of expertise and it's not mine. So I think the most important thing is just backing yourself and having that confidence. If you come across as really nervous, then the client has reason to be nervous as well. But if you're confident and if you don't know something, just say, I'm not 100% sure on that, I'm going to get back to you, and just be proactive. That's how you kind of, I believe, instill confidence in your clients. But,
no problem.
Oh, sorry, my watch is going off. But yeah, I'd like to hear Alistair, how you dealt with that as well.
I think it's kind of just, we used to talk always about, advisors being good at managing clients sort of one generation either side of you. And I think that, as a young person thinking about it, especially if you're speaking to potentially people who are retirees or getting close to that, what is the common thing that you can sort of link to? And, you're probably the same age as their children. And again, it's kind of one of those things that you need to stamp your the confidence that you know what you're talking about, or you'll be there on the journey through retirement. Like if they're retiring and you're 25, 20, 30 years old, then you're going to be there for the long haul as well. So there's lots of different ways to do that. But I think it comes back to whether you're going for an interview or engaging with a client or something, it's all in the authenticity and the rapport building. And I think Dawn would probably have the same thing if she's got an elderly client or a younger client as well. I think probably Dawn, you've got a lot of experience in dealing with the same situation too. Like, how do you deal with it? I'm going to turn the question on you, because I think you've probably been in that situation too, where you've got an elderly client, and how do you deal with it?
Well, I mean, I think that I probably had that double bit, right? Being an immigrant as well as being young and female, so that was interesting. So one thing I would say is, I totally resonate what you're saying about being genuine and authentic. When I was learning, I heard a lot of advisors just talk about footy and cricket, and this is stuff that I can't talk about, So I've learned to be confident that when I bridge that commonality bit with clients, because there's always something you can find in common with the person in front of you. I talk about food, travel, kids, things that I can tell you people want to connect with you, and then they will be open to all the technical stuff that will eventually come. But our job is a people job. So that's basically our job, understand people and connect to them. But thanks for throwing that back to me. I appreciate it.
No worries. I always say, in this profession, there are opportunities to be more analytical roles, but this is a people one. So I used to always, my question was, do you like people?
Yeah.
And people would go, what do you mean, do I like people? And then sometimes I go, sometimes, but this is all about how you connect with people. And then the rest of everything, looks after itself, I think.
Yeah, and I think that kind of through to the other question, right? I mean, Azaria has talked about it, Osama has talked about it. They're talking about communicating to people in different ways. And that's important in this job, is that people don't learn the same. You'll find couples don't learn the same either, or communicate the same. So you guys are going to have to become master communicators, communicating with your team, communicating with your leaders, communicating with your clients. And so that experimental piece that Azaria and Osama are talking about even going, do I go by video? Do I go by written word? Do I, you need to figure these things out. Do you use your whiteboard? Jack came up with this amazing whiteboard for client presentation because he's a junior associate. So things like that is experiment with how you're going to communicate. Even if you're a paraplanner, you need to communicate with your team around you with what you need. So I think that's important. I think I've also just wanted to ask a question to Jack and Ashutosh, just being really involved in the university space. We've talked about professional year a lot, and I think we've got more questions about professional year, so we'll jump back into it. But Jack and Ashutosh, you've been involved in basically the student societies within your university. I mean, how has that helped you both in trying to embedding yourself into your future careers?
I think it starts off by giving you that experience, the networking experience that teaches you how to interact with people that you may not have interacted with at school, but you have a lot in common with still. So I guess that's why. For me personally, I really enjoyed it. So I can't just sit behind a screen and learn. I have to be going up to people and asking how they're going, and especially for group assignments, I need to know who I'm working with. I can't just be emailing them and sharing assignments. I really want to know who I'm working with. So I think that's what made me want to get so involved with uni. But yeah, I'm not sure about Ashutosh.
Same with me. I'm usually the one that starts the group chats, all that. Even I've had drinks with some of the group members even afterwards, after we submitted. But getting involved with student societies has probably built my confidence more than ever. I never really had that much confidence to begin with. However, I've been on society now for about 2 or 3 years. I've been able to build my rapport with industry, with faculty, and that's really been helping me to also build a professional brand for myself, and as well as help other students as well, and helping them build their brand and get to where they really want to be.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for the steps before professional year to acknowledge that you're already starting those bridges and learning how to talk to people, which Alistair said is important. You need to understand the business of people. And Zach, you've had a very recent experience of going from retail into jumping to the financial planning world. Can you just tell us a bit about that experience? Because that's really exciting to make that move, and you're still studying, and now you've entered the space that you want to be in.
Yeah, so just for a bit of reference, spent probably my past 7-8 years in retail. So I pretty much spent my entire life around people. In my spare time, I'm a volunteer basketball coach as well. So again, my entire life pretty much revolves around people. So I guess really coming into the industry, it was really about establishing myself, really just kind of putting myself forward and just, diving into the opportunity, really.
Thanks for that, Zach. Alistair, I think I've got another question for you. There's a few here. We've got a question around Striver itself. In terms of, do you just deal with larger companies or companies of all sizes in terms of placement?
Yeah, so we work with all sorts, right? So we've got a great partnership with IOOF, which is now the biggest sort of collective network of licenses and advisors in the country, larger than AMP, I understand, all the way through to smaller boutique independent firms, and then large sort of national footprinted franchises, private wealth and family office businesses. So we've got a bit of everything, and we as a business make money from the profession and the industry. We don't make money from students. So what the role is, all you guys need to do is go and set up a profile and answer a couple of questions, and then we'll sort of take you through the process. It doesn't cost you anything. You might learn something, and we might just be able to, show you some really great opportunities. But we work with all sorts of types, and it's a bit different, right? The profession is very, very different to, when I actually left being employed in it in 2011, a long time ago. There's not all the big banks are out of it. They're all, there's some fragmentation and so forth. And there's lots of these small businesses that have all sort of tying together and becoming quite large businesses. So there's a really mixed landscape. And then there's, private wealth management firms that are, and quite large brands around the place that are really sort of growing at pace as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities. And I guess one of the challenges for you guys is like, what are the options out there? What are they? Are there boutique options? Are there large corporates? What does that mean? What does independence mean? What does it really mean? And so forth. So, there's lots of different options, if that's the question.
Yeah, I think that is, and that leads into another question Ashley's got around what sort of entry-level positions are available to people who are still studying?
Yeah, perfect. So a lot of our clients like to find people in their last year and give them 3 or 4 days a week while they're still studying, which is perfect. It's perfect for you and it's perfect for them. And back in the day when you could travel, imagine that you were in your final year of university and you were working 3 days and maybe 5 days through the holiday in a place where you could have, like Azaria said, go to a university and apply the work that you did at the end of the year when we can go backpacking. You can take 2 months off, go backpacking and come back to a full-time permanent job. That's nirvana. So a lot of the businesses are very, very open to that, and we work with that. But the roles are generally customer service, client admin, trainee, paraplanner as a starting point. And if you're on your journey to a professional year, and I should chime in here too, just to set a bit of expectation, if you come out with a financial planning approved degree straight out of high school, straight into university and straight into the firm, it is very unlikely that you'll enter a professional year straight away.
Yeah.
It will be a couple of years. And that is the opportunity to become the best client administrator that there possibly is, really understand your customer service. I remember paraplanning for a couple of years, and all I wanted to do was be the best, most efficient and most accurate paraplanner there was. And, that is the stuff that makes you a very good advisor long term, because it gives you that base foundation. So those tend to be the roles: customer service, client, admin, trainee, paraplanner.
Oh, thanks for that. So that kind of sets the stage. A very relevant point that you're not going to jump into your professional year first up, because that's setting the expectation. Jack and Lily, you are both junior associates now, and I think you're kind of reflecting what Alistair was saying around the journey, where you've done a few other roles before ending there. How did you kind of come to the point where you are embarking on a professional year? You've got a junior associate role. How did that kind of happen? How did that change actually happen for you?
I'll start. So I guess, yeah, I started in my second year of uni just doing a couple of days a week as a client service manager in a small boutique firm. And like Alistair said, really laying your foundations, understanding how the advice process works from when they come to their first meeting to when you're implementing the advice. That's super important. And then, yeah, from there, progressing to a trainee paraplanner role where you understand X-Plan and you get your head around an ROA and an SOA and how that all works. And then, yeah, my favorite role so far, the junior paraplanner role, where you're actually going into client meetings and applying your soft skills and then going out and doing the research to apply technical skills. So I think it's a really interesting journey, but you're right, Alistair, it does take a couple of years to really be at the level you need to be to start that professional year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was pretty much the same. I started out in client services in a sort of, not a small but not a big firm. There was about 14 advisors there, and everyone can do client services. That's all your transferable skills. You need to be able to communicate with people, attention to detail, all of that kind of stuff that you learn in other jobs, no matter what it is, transfer that in. So looking for those sorts of roles and then progressing your way up, because it does take time to understand the whole process. And I look at it as, not like, oh, I'm wasting my time at this level, but by the time I get to an advisor, I will have done every support role underneath them. So I will understand the people that are supporting me and how I can best work with them to be able to make the process as smooth and efficient as possible.
So in terms of both of you stepping into that world, have you started developing your view on what kind of advisor you are going to be?
Good first, Jack.
Yeah, I guess it's something that you need to sort of find a niche, I guess, and work out, what clients do you want to be working with and how do you want to approach meetings. I guess it's, working with an advisor that knows what they're talking about and can train you and has the capacity to train you. So Lily and I are both super lucky. Both our advisors are amazing and they're really different. So that's another part as well. You'll work with different advisors through your early career and they're going to be so different. And I think it's just picking up bits that you like from each advisor and maybe leaving behind bits that you don't and building this package that you want to present to your clients down the track.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I haven't really decided yet what kind of advisor I want to be, but I think I've got a lot more learning to do. I spend a lot of time with doing.
I think we might have had a internet cut out there. And
so we work with. Oh, sorry, has it come back now?
It's come back now. Yeah.
Yeah. Same for me. I think, you spend a lot of time with your advisor that you follow. And so hopefully you get broad experience through that. But I haven't really decided yet what exactly I want to do. And I hope I think it's something that you just have to figure out as you go along, really.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Now, Alistair and Azaria, I think two of you are the ones to handle this question. Can the professional year be commenced by a financial planning student working part-time in a financial planning firm as an undergraduate before they graduate? It's a highly technical professional development question.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There it is. I am finished.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
I think so, yeah.
Done.
Well, it used to be that you had to complete your degree before you were allowed to commence the professional year, but they changed that a year or two ago. So just read through the FASIA document online. I believe that you can start your professional year when you've got 6 months left of your study, but just check that one.
Thank you. I'm glad both of you came to an answer.
Imagine we disagreed on that. That would have been, and we've end it and no one knows any better.
Yeah. You see, but that just also demonstrates how, professional year is just, like Azaria said, just get onto it, find out what the facts are, and then you go in armed with your employer. So, that is fantastic to hear. Now, in terms of, we've had a comment there about resources. There's a financial planning group called AZ Advisor, I believe, and we've got a recommendation to join XY Advisor. So again, like great, Daryl's kind of shared that in the chat box. You build your community. Even AFA has a Gen Z advisor group on LinkedIn, but AFA also has the Pulse group, Gen Next, which also deals with young people. So get into as many communities and groups as possible. Also, you can be a student member at any of the associations. So join more than one of them, and find out, the association over time that's going to be dealing the best for your circumstances as well. I just wanted to also ask a question. We've got about 5 minutes to go to Osama. Osama, you're not just doing, I'm very fascinated by the sense of what an advisor looks like, right? So Osama, you're not afraid to kind of delve away from a typical pathway of an advisor. I know you're quite interested in kind of business elements and setting up things. What's your perception of what an advisor is to you?
Sure. So advisor for me, well, realistically, an advisor for me is someone who can assist and help individuals for their short-term or long-term goals, specifically related to money. So usually an advisor is your first point and your end point to your financial circumstances and needs. And basically they can help you with anything that's related to money and taxation. So there's a lot of elements that goes in that as well. But an advisor or a planner is someone that assists you for short-term and long-term goals.
Okay, thanks, Osama. So, Azaria, I just wanted to, the last question probably I'm going to ask you, Azaria, just because I'm so fascinated by how you've done what you've done. I really like I like it when people redefine what an average perception of a role is. Azaria, you've come up with such great tips on Gen Z money. I was listening to the one about negotiating pay. I love how personal it was that you bring in your experience that's in there as well. So we've talked about a lot of things, professional development, how to pitch yourself. Let's be real about the experience of pay and possibly toxic workplaces, things like that. How would you, as a leaving tip for everyone, how would they navigate that, being young and new?
Yeah, before this session, Alistair was talking and making a really good point about how the power is in the graduate's hand at the moment. So I've definitely been through that where I felt like I wasn't being paid enough, or I felt like I wasn't being valued enough in the business. And my biggest tip would be to discuss that with your employer and don't be afraid to leave. I think one of the mistakes that I've made in the past is feeling like I owe my employer something and I owe them, my time working there. But you got to realize that you're the only person who can control your career is yourself. It's your life. So if you don't feel that you're getting the progression or the pay that you deserve, speak up. And if you're not getting the results, you can move on. There are so many people. If you are a degree qualified young person in this industry, you have so many opportunities at hand. So don't ever feel tied down to something that's not right for you. And just another really good thing is to talk to other people your age and in your industry. Like, what are you guys getting paid? What kind of benefits are your employers offering? Are they helping you through the professional year? Are they receptive to the suggestions that you're making for your career progression? Don't be afraid to have those conversations with other people, because that just helps you all make sure that you're getting what you're worth.
Brilliant. I think, Alistair, you wanted to add something to that as well?
I agree with everything Azaria said. It's just always better to have all those conversations before you start your job. So if you're fine, if you're in a job, but if just make sure you go into the table. I sort of think be an informed consumer, right? Make sure you know what's important to you and you have that open, frank conversation and you feel like you're going into a workplace where you can have that open and frank conversation. And therefore you're setting your relationship up. Your relationship with your employer, especially your first one, should be a couple of years, right? Because that sort of really sets your foundation. So do the best you can about setting the expectations in that conversation early, so that you can give it the best chance of, good foundations build good homes. I don't know, I just made that up.
No, that's I think that is excellent advice, because Alistair was saying that it is a buoyant market, and the power is in your hands at the moment. So we all want you all to have a good experience going through the financial planning industry and make this industry a better place to be in. So set those expectations, stick to what you're worth. And I'm looking forward to more amazing people just joining our industry in whichever role it is. Thank you all for being a part of this. And again, to our facilitators, Jack, Zachary, and Ashutosh, for doing an amazing job of the student takeover. Be safe, everyone. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
It's